Well, good evening. Welcome to American Reversion. I'm Steve Smith. It's good to have you all here tonight. We're going to have some things to cover. Before we start, I want to remind everyone, if you would, to like, to hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you're not, so that you get notifications every time we come up with something new, which is going to be pretty much every day. And then watch what we're talking about tonight and leave a comment if you'd like. Other people will learn from you, I'm sure, and we all want to know what everyone is thinking. Before we get into the night, this show is brought to you by my book, The Reversion, because that's where this channel got its name. And on the front of this, it says, when the world collapsed, some were ready to start over. That's what this book is about. It's about rebuilding a society that's worth living in after society has gone in the ditch and the whole world went in the ditch. But even now, even though it hasn't really happened to us yet here today, what's happened in this book, I think the world's kind of collapsed and I'm ready to start over. How about you? Well, let's talk about some things that have gone on just since yesterday. First off, I won't say that this is on a lighter note. I don't wish ill on anyone, but the response was kind of funny, and that is the great journalist, the great thinker, the great American Geraldo Rivera. It seems that he has been diagnosed with the dreaded big C, COVID, not the big C, the little c, COVID. And he is just in shock. He's beside himself. He doesn't know what to make of it because he is double vaxxed and boosted, And so this is just beyond him how this could possibly happen. Who knows, right? So we wish Geraldo well, and we would hope that somehow maybe this might improve his thinking process. Who knows? It hasn't seemed to improve the thinking process of many who are experiencing this right now, has it? But then what can we do? Okay, we're going to get into a couple of things here. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my computer screen. What did Rush Limbaugh used to say? No, I'm not comparing myself to Rush Limbaugh. Boy, I wish, right? But what did he say? The golden EIB microphone. Well, all I have is a phone, and looking down at my laptop for the stories that I've gleaned, and I wanted to talk a little bit about with you tonight. Civil War, secret police, all sorts of shenanigans going on around right now, and racism in healthcare. Let's start with racism in healthcare, shall we? Maybe some of you have heard of this. You might have. This is from the Gateway Pundit. It says, must watch. And I'm going to put the link to this story down below here, where I also put the link as to where you can buy my book. And also, if you'd like to support the channel, we invite you to come over and join us on Patreon as a patron. You can pledge your $1 a month there or whatever you want to. I've noticed that there's been some people pledging more than that. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. You are becoming a part of the fight when you do that. Because we don't want just a resistance, in my opinion. I don't want just a resistance. I want a reversion. We'll get more to that later. So I'll put a link down below in the information box here so that you can go watch this video that I'll be referring to. It says Texas HHS denies monoclonal antibody treatments for whites. A guy went in there. He was denied these treatments. He says, if I were black or Hispanic, then would I qualify? The nurse replied, yep, that's right. This is America in 2022, right? Yeah. Interesting. And I think that anybody that doesn't, sit up and accept this as reality needs to take a hard look at both reality and themselves. You need to tighten up and understand that these things really are happening. I'll read the article here a little bit, and then we'll move on. But this kind of applies to what's coming up. It says earlier this year, the Texas Health and Human Services Department, HHS, made monoclonal antibody treatments available to COVID patients following its emergency use authorization by the Food and Drug Administration in February. And that's important to remember. It is being used under an emergency use authorization. The state has issued tens of thousands of monoclonal antibody treatments over the past several months, but recently, thanks to a supply shortage, the agency has begun segregating who can receive the treatment based solely on the color of their skin. I thought that segregation was supposed to be wrong. Or am I wrong? Or am I right? It's kind of hard to follow, isn't it? When are we wrong and when are we right? Segregation, is it good, is it bad? It kind of depends on who it's for or against, it appears. And if you've kept up with our Supreme Court, you realize that apparently some of them are only on the court because they couldn't get into cosmetology school. So we'll continue this. Now the state is only providing the treatments to high risk. I shouldn't have said that. That's not a slam on any cosmetologists out there. I know some cosmetologists who are extremely, extremely sharp people. The girl who cuts my hair, the woman who cuts my hair, a very bright person and a very good person, and these people, probably more of them would do well on the Supreme Court than we have. So let me get back to this. Now the state is only providing the treatments to so-called high-risk ethnicity groups, while actively refusing to provide the same care to whites who have been diagnosed with COVID. You following? You staying up on this? Are you mad yet? You should be. I don't care what color you are. I bet you my black friends are mad at this if they're watching this. In one shocking example of the state-sponsored racism that was caught on video, InfoWars host Harrison Smith visited a Texas HHS clinic on Saturday, where he was denied monoclonal antibody treatment simply because he was white. Smith, who hosts the American Journal, no relation, who hosts the American Journal and InfoWars Network, tweeted that he was denied the effective treatment for COVID because of his race, and that he was told that if he had been black or Hispanic, then he would have been eligible. He added that experiencing this modern-day segregation as effing insane. Very interesting. I do suggest, and I'll put this down there, go, after you're finished watching this, go down and go to the link that I'm going to put down there to Gateway Pundit and watch the interaction between the nurse and Mr. Smith on that. Okay, so that kind of lays the groundwork, right? We have reverted back to segregation as being okay, as long as it's against whites. Okay? And there will be some that go, oh, well, that's just racist to say that. Well, is it racist to say that or racist to do it? Which is wrong, the wrong deed or calling out the deed? Okay. Imagine another American Civil War, but this time in every state. That's the headline from NPR. I don't usually I never watch NPR or read anything from NPR, but I got this off of one of the aggregators, and it led me to this, and I went over and watched it, and it was well worth reading. It kind of spins off of what I just read there, and it talks about that people are finally sick and tired of unfair treatment, and that there's a split, there's a fissure, a big division, a crevasse between people of different ideologies in our country. And I don't think that there's any way to heal that. But this is an interesting take on it. This is an interesting article, even though it's from NPR. They do have some good information. I want to read it. I begin the article. Not long ago, the idea of another American Civil War seemed outlandish. These days, the notion has not only gone mainstream, it seems to suddenly be everywhere. Business Insider published a poll in October 2020 saying a majority of Americans believe the U.S. was already in the midst of a cold civil war. I'd say that that's kind of getting warm now. Then last fall, the University of Virginia Center for Politics released a poll finding that a majority of people who had voted to re-elect former President Donald Trump in 2020 now wanted their state to secede from the Union. I agree. There's no way that people of such disparate ideas, disparate meaning different, right, can coexist. It just doesn't make any sense. So secession, and I've talked about that on the other channel, the secession of the South, and I explained a little bit about that. Maybe we'll get into that more here someday. Today is not that day. Anyway, so a majority felt that they wanted to secede from the Union. The UVA data also showed a stunning 41% of those who voted for Joe Biden in 2020 also said it might now be, quote, time to split the country. Okay, so it's not just all those wackos on the right. It's not just all those wacko Trumpsters, right? It's not all those who, like us, believe in the founding principles of America. It's those others too, right? 41% of the ones on the other side, half of whom are just full-blown communists, also want a split of the country. I would much prefer that, because their alternative, what they really want to do is take over the country. If they just want to split the country, I will be happy to give them the cities and we'll take the rest, wouldn't you? And we'll see how they do. Okay, returning to the article. Researchers have found such downbeat assessments of America's democracy are especially salient among the young. Last month, the Institute of Politics at Harvard's Kennedy School published a poll that found half of voting-age Americans under 30 thought our democracy was in trouble or failing. A third also said they expected there to be a civil war within their lifetime, and a quarter thought at least one state would secede. Now, that's amazing. Under 30, right? We think about these people as being totally disconnected, unplugged, unfamiliar with history, don't care about much of anything but their excessive grooming. But they thought that, but half of them think the country's in trouble, and a third expected a civil war. Now, we have to wonder what they view as a civil war. Most of them really, well, okay. I'm not going to say that because I know some very, very sharp people under 30. So they expect a civil war, a third of them, within their lifetime, and a quarter thought at least one state would secede. The more one hears this particular drumbeat, the louder it becomes. Last year, University of Maryland and the Washington Post produced a poll saying that 1/3 of Americans thought violence against the government was sometimes justified. Interesting. That's going to have to do with the next thing that we're going to read. A belief that found even more widely held, a belief they found even more widely held among Republicans and independents. According to the Post, just about 1 American in 10 held that view in the 1990s. So we've seen a great growth in this idea that violence against the government was sometimes justified. Now, you know, if you're gonna talk about that, if you're gonna think about that, you have to see whether or not, just like the Supreme Court, right? I mean, the Supreme Court, they think that they're the ones that we should all follow, and they put a great deal of importance on precedent, right? What has come before? So I wonder if we have any precedent for this, the fact that that violence against the government was sometimes justified. Do we have a precedent for that? Did you ever study the American Revolution in your history classes? Do the respondents in all these polls fully realize that what these terms mean or their answers imply? Possibly not. Talk is often cheap, and pollsters can make a lot of provocative questions in pursuit of something noteworthy or buzzworthy. That's right. So they qualify that. But the thing that is interesting is the raw data. We have an unbelievable number of people in our country now, including those under 30, who fully expect a civil war and think that the country should split. Okay. Let's go to our next little morsel of the night. The Justice Department, this is an AP story. Justice Department is creating a unit focused on domestic terrorism. Well, oh, come on. Forming? Really? I mean, it's been there forever. They're just apparently wanting a new department, probably to get more money and giving it a name. So here we have this AP story. It says the Justice Department is establishing a specialized unit. I like it. Specialized unit focused on domestic terrorism. The department's top national security official told lawmakers Tuesday as he described an elevated threat from violent extremists in the United States. You know what I bet this is? I bet this is about the possibility of people getting together and burning cities and destroying businesses and surrounding federal buildings and courthouses and holding federal agents inside and shooting at police and assassinating. No, I'm sorry, it can't be, right? Because that already happened, and they didn't do anything about that. That seemed to be okay. This must be about something else. Let's read on, because he said he's describing an elevated threat. Assistant Attorney General Matthew Olson, testifying just days after the nation observed the one-year anniversary of the little get-together at the U.S. Capitol. They didn't say get-together. They said something else that I won't repeat that word because it wasn't. It's just another lie from the media. He said that a number of FBI investigations into suspected domestic violent extremists has more than doubled since the spring of 2020. Now, here's the thing to see out of that. He said the number of FBI investigations into suspected domestic violent extremists. Look at all the qualifiers in that. Not situations, but investigations into suspected. Okay, more than double. That means that they had a big old meeting. Hey, I was there. I used to be in the Monster. For those of you who don't know, I worked in the Monster for long enough to know how it works. Somebody says, you know what, this is the next thing we can make a lot of money on. Let's have a big-ass meeting, and everybody can come in and look important and talk to each other and look very serious, and we can decide how to get bigger budgets in order to fight whatever we can come up with that is the next big scary thing. And everybody comes and they get together and they all, pat each other on the back and come out of there knowing that they're going to get big bonuses, and they're fat and happy. He says, we have seen a growing threat from those who are motivated by racial animus. Really? Could that be like denying somebody a treatment for an illness because they're white? No, obviously not that. But they're motivated by racial animus. Could that be burning cities? No, can't be that. As well as those who ascribe to extremist, anti-government, and anti-authority ideologies. I say that because could be ideologies, but these people are idiots. So right now I'm going to pronounce it ideology. If you look back at that and you say, these who ascribe to extremist and anti-government and anti-authority ideologies, Joseph Stalin could have said that, couldn't he? Right? They, these people, they just they keep on getting upset about me slaughtering millions of people, and we just can't have that. They don't like the fact that they live in a police state, and therefore they're a bunch of malcontents, and we got to set them right. And so let's have some investigations. Thank you, Uncle Joe. And Uncle Joe, which Uncle Joe might we be talking about in that? The formulation of a new unit underscores the extent to which domestic violent extremism which for years after the September 11 attacks was overshadowed by the threat of international terrorism. No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't at all. As soon as that happened, they were immediately looking for domestic terrorists. They used the Patriot Act to slam dunk the constitutional rights of Americans. They let half of the international terrorists skate by. But boy, they used that to put a clamp on American citizens, didn't they? Let me see where I was. So they said they were overshadowed by the threat of international terrorism. Yeah, right. It has attracted urgent attention inside the federal government and at the White House. Urgent attention. Every year since, I don't know, since I can remember almost, ever since everybody remember Randy Weaver, the big boogeyman has been violent domestic extremists. We'll open our borders. We will fly them in from the Middle East. We won't even check them. We'll settle them all over the country, especially in Minnesota, apparently. And we will fly them in and give them money and from the American taxpayer, and they're of no concern. However, anybody who is an American citizen here had better watch out. They go on to explain, but the same issue remains politically freighted and divisive, in part because the absence of a federal domestic terrorism statute. There are more federal statutes than you can shake 10 sticks at to cover these things, has created ambiguities as to precisely what sort of violence meets that definition. No, it hasn't. They bend the rules, they bend the laws until those laws and rules are screaming. But they want more. See what this is about? They want more. The U.S. Criminal Code defines domestic terrorism as violence intended to coerce or intimidate a civilian population and to influence government policy, but there is no standalone domestic terrorism charge, meaning prosecutors have to rely on other statutes. Okay, that's what's coming, a domestic terrorism charge, and that's what they're after. So let's put these last few together, and then we'll kind of balance it out with this last one. And this comes from the New American. Big Brother backseat driver. New law mandates kill switches in all new cars. We have to pass the bill so we can find out what's in it, infamously said House Speaker Nancy Pelosi about Obamacare in 2010. Everybody remember that? Let's pass Obamacare. I heard so many otherwise apparently intelligent people that I had thought were intelligent support that Obamacare bill because they trusted the people in government. You have to wonder whether those people should really be allowed to vote, don't you? In reality, having the public not know what's in a bill until it's too late is standard procedure. That's right. A prime example is reportedly in the recently passed $1.2 trillion, 2,700-page infrastructure bill, a requirement that kill switches be put in all new cars. Okay. Well, there you go. So if the police, and of course what they say is, well, if somebody's running from the police and the police can flip a switch in their car and shut that car down. I don't know how it works. I've been gone too long. We didn't have technology back in my day. Most technological thing I had was a two-way radio. But I know nowadays they've got all sorts of stuff. You can't get it in the front seat of a police car because of all the computers and everything else. So I can't even imagine what they have. But now I'm sure they're going to have a way to shut down a vehicle instead of chasing it. And they're going to sell everybody on the idea that this makes everything safer. It will make it unnecessary to have car chases and blah, 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 blah. And a lot of people will say, well, there's already kill switches in all new cars. They can shut down a car if they want to. I've heard that for years. You probably have too. And I would like, if anybody out there knows that to be true, please put, okay, I don't let links on here, but put a link over on Patreon. Okay, you can put links over there, and I would like to know. Okay, so but only if, don't come on and say, I know that they've got them. I had a friend who had a buddy who worked at a Ford dealership, and blah blah blah. No, none of that. I had somebody come on the other channel the other day and kind of argue with something that I had said, and I'm not I don't know everything, so it was something that I had never heard of, and I asked them to, and it was put kind of rudely. They did put it kind of rudely. And so I said, well, can you kind of send me a what's your source? And I never heard from him again. Don't do that. I don't. These are drive-by shots, and that's silly and that's stupid, and I won't put up with that. But if anybody does know, if you do know for a fact or even a fair certainty that that newer cars have kill switches in them, I'd love to know, and I'm sure everybody else would love to. Right now, it's just an urban legend. So put the link over there, and if I find it to be valid, I will put the link over here, because everybody needs to know that kind of stuff. Okay, those were the main things of the day. Racism, supported by the government and most people. In healthcare, how do you like that? Does that remind you anything of Tuskegee? Is that the name of it? Yeah, what was that? Well, it's my mind's having a time right now, but the one that I'm talking about, to where they did some experiments on some black men who had syphilis. They gave some a drug to treat it, others a placebo, never told them anything about it, and used them essentially as guinea pigs. I don't see a big difference. Well, yeah, I do see a big difference here. They're just flat out refusing to treat, right, on the basis of race. Okay, and more talk of civil war, but along much broader lines than we've talked about before. They need more money for investigations of domestic terrorism. You know why? Because they expect to discover more domestic terrorists. And finally, they put in this bill to make all new cars have kill switches so that the government can shut down your car anytime they feel like it. How does that sound to you, campers? Was that pretty good? This is why we say that America needs a reversion. It doesn't need to just stop the progression of what's going on. It needs to turn things around. It needs to turn them back to the way they were supposed to be, and that's what reversion means. A return to the way things used to be or should be. And for those of us who have a good idea of that and who believe in the standards, the principles on which our country was based, we need to step up our game. We need to be doing more. We need to be talking. We need to be involved in the political process. We need to support those in politics who we think will do the right thing. And then if we find they don't, then we pull it and we work against them. That's what we can do. That's all we can do until it gets to a next step that I think most of us hope we never have to go to. But right now, this is our battlefield where we talk. And the way that you can help is that you can spread this around. Like I asked before, like this, subscribe to it, leave a comment, leave your thoughts. Help other people see that there are others out there who feel the way they do. And then spread this around. That's the way you can fight now. Send this to the people that you know, who you may think are on the same page as we are. and who might like to hear this. Because what this is giving, you don't have to send it to people who you know are on the other side. It's just going to tick them off, and that's not what we are doing right now. If you think that there's somebody out there who's on the fence and this might help, that's fine. But what this does is when you send this to people, they hear this. And then they can use these stories in conversations, because that's the battlefield. The battlefield is in conversations between people, between individuals, between friends, between acquaintances, between family members. And when you have this information at your fingertips, and I know it's kind of hard to read sometimes, but when you hear somebody talking about, sometimes it gets in our mind and settles there a little bit better. And when you have this information at your fingertips, you can interject it into a conversation with somebody who may disagree with you on other things, but you know what? They probably feel pretty much the same thing about government overreach and domestic terrorism and kill switches in their cars and segregation in medical delivery systems, right? So do what you can, spread this around. I appreciate it. If you would like to support this channel, again, join us over on Patreon. I only have one level. It's $1 a month. You can do $1 a month. You can do more if you like. Whatever you do, we appreciate it. It's going to help keep this going. And please share this with your friends and the people that you know in your contacts, because we would like to build this to get this out to a lot more people. With that, I hope you have a great night and a great day tomorrow. Hopefully, God willing, I will see you tomorrow. Good night.